Good afternoon. Happy Thursday once again. Welcome to a special edition of Let's Build. We're here with Erin talking about membership experiences in HubSpot. How's it going, Erin?
It's going really good. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about, so I'm super excited to dive in and show y'all some stuff.
Yeah, that's me too. Me too. This was one of my first, I've started doing unboxing category episodes, if you will, and unboxing memberships. The day that Content Hub launched, when they came down to pro level, was my first unboxing episode. So very interested in always learning more and helping others. I think this is one of the secret sauces that is a true differentiator of HubSpot, should you choose to use it. Like, no other systems are built with website experiences and CRMs just so tightly integrated. And so I'm happy to have you on and show us, what kind of things we can do because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I will share my screen and we'll just dive into this demo here.
How long have you been creating, these kinds of experiences with HubSpot or any other system for that matter?
So I've been a developer. I've been developing exclusively on HubSpot for about 10 years now. It has not always been as robust as what it is now. So I've really only been delving into like membership stuff probably for the past four years or so. And it's really just about leveraging data on a front end interface. And being able to change the experience based on what you already know about your user. So I think, like, to your point, it sets HubSpot apart like heads and tails above any of the competition, because there's just not a way to really make your data this actionable, in my opinion. So yeah. I think it's membership is, if you're not using it now, like, you should be 100%. Like, find a use case for it. Give your users some kind of personalized experience.
Yeah. And I usually start with when trying to help teams understand, it's because this has always been something that it's like a dream. Like, there's $1 million implementations, or for some reason it seems impossible. And so they haven't even thought down deep on what the applications could be. And I usually start with something as simple as what kind of data do you want your customers to see, right? And sometimes it's digging deep to the easy stuff, because it's like they can't think of anything. And then it's like, well, do you ever send tracking information via email? It's like, yes. Right. Okay. That is something that could be on a web page, and that could be the only thing on the web page, and that will have some value to the customer who wants to see it. So,
for sure. Yeah, I love that. Starting with the data is such a good strategy, and figuring out, like, how do I make this data valuable for my users, is just a critical question, I think. So this is a demo site that I have set up. It does have memberships. All of these are different custom objects. So we've got a news object, an event object, a discussion object. The directory is actually the contact objects within the CRM, and it's done through a membership, kind of an extra custom object, and I'll kind of talk about why that is. But for the most basic functionality, you want to be able to know if the user is logged in on the page or not, because then I can show, if they're not logged in, a nice little login button. And it should remember me, but okay, there we go. And then once I've logged in, we'll see a different menu there. So now I can go to my profile, or a dashboard, or log out. So the entire menu has changed. And the way that I'm doing that is actually really just dead simple with HubSpot modules. And I think that's what a lot of companies are missing out on, is like how much flexibility HubSpot puts in these modules. Like you can do just about anything with their custom modules. So this is my smart menu here. So we've got my custom menu. And so I've got options here for the public secondary menu and then my logged in secondary menu. So the first one just shows login. The secondary is the one that we're seeing on this page. And so what the code looks like there. Oh, and I'm going to show you, I don't know if you, this is one of my favorite tricks. Developer mode, true. So if you're in a page editor or a global content editor and you put developer mode true at the end, oh my gosh. So this guy here.
Oh, wow.
You can really quickly jump to that module in the design manager. So you don't have to like, because sometimes whatever it says on the front end, like the label is different from what's in the theme, and you might be using different themes. And so if you need a shortcut, that is super handy.
This episode just became worth it. Like, right. I did not know that, and that is very helpful.
It's super helpful. It's also really helpful if you're building templates, because it allows you to grab these as Hubble. So you can copy like a whole section's worth of, I'll show you what it looks like. Get down to the bottom here. So it brings in that drag and drop code with all of the configuration and stuff. So that's a really quick way to streamline how you're building the templates themselves, because then you can easily create, let's see, sections wherever those are, and then your templates themselves. So yeah, that's a super, super nice trick. Developer mode, camel case equals true in an editor. And then for this module, it's actually, I mean, it's a fairly elegant solution here. I just have is logged in as a true or false. And you can use this request contact dot is logged in. And that's going to return that true or false to tell you what menu to show. And so then I have my menu ID declared, and that's what's used in the module itself. And I'm swapping out either the membership or public based on that variable. So really just 2 lines of code here is different, and it makes it that much more dynamic. So really cool use case there. People who have a membership area are going to want this module. So here you go. Here's how you create that. Another cool trick that you might not know about, that is another one of my favorites, is developer info. So you're going to want to get a Chrome extension. And I can't remember off the top of my head what it's called, but it's a Chrome extension to view JSON easier. And so that's what's doing here. So this is a comprehensive list of all of the variables that you have access to on the page. So if I look for is logged in, so now we can see whether or not I'm logged in. Did I use SSO to log in? Am I a HubSpot user? What are my list memberships? The list memberships I use a ton to have different levels of access to different pages. So you can come in here and find, like, if you're trying to print out some data and you're not really sure where to look, this is a good place to start and see if it's on your page. And then if it's not on your page, you can start to figure out like, okay, how am I gonna pull that data in, with a CRM objects call or HubDB tables or even GraphQL or anything like that. And once you get that data on the page, it will also show up here. So super, super handy way to figure out if the data that you're looking for is even available to you. And there's all sorts of cool things that you can get, like cookies. I have a guest feature on this site. So I have an is guest cookie that allows people to view stuff that would be, I guess, considered public, versus if you're not a guest, you get the full membership access. So from the Sprocket menu, it's just that developer info right there, and that's super handy.
Yeah. And curious, because I think, well, first I should ask, like, why aren't more people leveraging these kinds of functionalities and these capabilities of HubSpot? Where's the disconnect? Because I hear a lot of, like, it's your learning curve or the cost or, all these things that, granted, like a lot of these things were true, like you mentioned, 4+ years ago, 3+ years ago.
Right.
Like, and there's been so much, like I said, April of this year, memberships came down to Pro. We're seeing a lot of development in that direction. You think that's the only reason? It's just this, it's so recent as far as the...
So I think there's a couple of barriers. The first is that in order to really get your data on the page effectively, you need to know Hubble. And Hubble is HubSpot's templating language. So you're only going to get Hubble experience working on HubSpot. So there's a little bit of like a barrier to like how many people are actually building with this, because they don't know the language to begin with. So that's kind of the first one. The second one, and I think memberships coming down to the pro level is going to help a lot, but I really didn't get a ton of exposure to this type of development until I was at an elite agency where a lot of our customers are enterprise level. And so I got to have, portals with all the bells and whistles, and was trying to solve problems at that level with that set of tools. And so I think I think there's a disconnect between the people who know how to do things in Hubble versus the people who are exposed to that tier of client that they're able to build for them. So once you kind of get in that sweet spot of like, okay, I know the Hubble, I have the clients to build on, then you, like, the learning curve is just like, you pick it up really, really quickly. But it just, there's a little bit of a barrier to get there, I think.
Right. Yeah. No, it's been the feeling, is like either it's a functional, issue that just hasn't been there, or there's been a cost barrier for, right. And like, even like when custom objects came out, like aside from the enterprise need there, mm-hmm. It's just this will to try and not use them almost. I was like, if we're going to be a good admin, we should do our job, like make sure we really, really, really need a custom object. And
right.
That caused a lot of, like, I think just a lack of trying things out with custom objects. Because once you can get there, like the pipelines and just, it's a custom object. So of course it's going to be very powerful, right. to kind of build the data model with that customizability in play.
Yeah, I love custom objects. It's like, I started out being a big HubDB person, and then I got to be able to work on more custom object stuff, and I was like, oh no, this is where it's at, with like all the pipelines and being able to have different like workflows triggered off of them and stuff. Like this news is a good example. So member news is a custom object that this page is based on. And so I can jump in here. So we've got a news object.
So it sounds like if that, like you mentioned HubDB, is that in terms of like when to use HubDB versus dynamic pages, or is that, because I always hasn't been super clear to me like when to use one or the other or both?
I think the main trigger that I would say default to HubDB first, because it's a little easier to manage things like rich text, and images especially are a little easier to maintain in HubDB. But if you're looking for something that you can trigger an automation off of, or if you need like a pipeline or anything like that where the stage is going to be important in addition to just the data that you're storing, then I would say bump it up to a custom object. I do a lot of kind of hybrid scenarios where HubDB is kind of storing a lot of the display data. So yeah, that's a good delineation. The data that you want to display on the page, like the images, the text content, things like that, that's probably best in HubDB. It's just a little easier to edit. But then once you start wanting to, especially if you want to associate it to different contacts and stuff. So like these articles are related to both the author and anyone who has like bookmarked them or anything like that. I thought I had the author on here. Maybe this is a different demo portal. But yeah, if you need relational data in addition to just display data, I would again bump up to a custom object. And people are really sleeping on dynamic pages too.
Yeah.
It's one of my absolute favorite hacks to just have a whole lot of content on your site without a whole lot of page infrastructure. You can just have the one template. And I demoed a page editor trick. I believe it was a couple of weeks ago on LinkedIn, but if anybody missed it, I have this method of editing HubDB or dynamically generated pages. Typically, you wouldn't be able to see a details page because it just defaults to the listing. But I can actually pull up one of these different news articles and see exactly what it looks like in the editor. So what
that's awesome.
Yeah. This saves me so much time, and it makes it so much easier when I'm creating this dynamic template to be able to just come in here and build it how I want it to look, and then use developer mode.
Yeah. And these are the kinds of things like just to for everybody out there that's like, obviously Erin is amazing at the craft, and often like, developers are going to develop. They're going to, from what I've seen, not to judge, like we go to the code because that's the thing that we know, and that's where it's easiest. You have the most power and most flexibility there. You know how to read through it. The whole reason like we do that is that now in my case, I'm not, an experienced developer, but now you've created situations where I don't need to be
right
to do things like, and this is a perfect example because I've had to go to the developer when trying to get dynamic pages just right, even though I'm looking at it on the CRM record and I'm like, I just want to be able to pull it up. Like if I could just pull it up, it would be so easy to solve for this. Right.
Yeah. And it's like the code, I am a big believer in not hard coding anything. So anytime I'm building a module, like I don't want to have to ever, I don't want a client to ever have to, the answer be, oh, it's hard coded. Like you'll have to call Erin to change that in the future. That's not, I deserve a cleaner inbox than that.
Yes.
So like, I'm just trying to put all of the options, on the front end to empower people to be able to use these tools. Otherwise, you're stuck with me.
Yeah. No, and I think that's where when we get into the cost conversations and why you're investing in this versus a free, quote unquote, free CMS. I'll never forget, like when I was in 2021 and I could show like a 70-year-old seasoned like scientist veteran who wanted to send me like Word docs, right? Like, hey, we're going to build out some application pages. Here's what I want on that page, right? Mm-hmm. It took 15 minutes, showed him how to do his own page. And now like it cuts out review processes. It empowers them to do, because they're always going to want it just right, especially when it's technical. And you just empower them to do it. And like, there's not many other systems, especially when it's right next to the work that they're already doing as a subject matter expert, as somebody like sales guys and salespeople's ability to just spin up sales content just like they would a PowerPoint deck, right? Like that's the ultimate goal with a lot of this stuff, and we can achieve that because of the modularity and templatability of the system.
For sure. Yeah, that's honestly one of my favorite parts, is building it in a way that you can change it going forward, and it's still going to work. Like this module in particular has all, like, because a listing is something that you build all the time. Like, you need all the cards to show like the title and the description and a tag or something like that. But you need to know, like, are you going to paginate it? Do you want to filter it by, like, for example, this one's filtered by the pipeline stage, so that we're only showing approved articles or published articles. So like if I move this one to published and then come back here, now we've got another article showing up here.
Oh man.
So like I'm all about building
That's gorgeous.
that in, right? It's yes. It's so elegant when you put it all together.
Right.
But yeah, this is kind of the bread and butter of all dynamic pages. Is you have your listing module, and then your individual pages. And that was one other thing I wanted to quickly show y'all. So for this, it's a custom object that creates the dynamic page, and you really don't have a lot of options for the slug. So typically when you create the custom object, you're probably not going to create the slug property, and it's just going to be the record ID. So I kind of took it one step further. The slug property is one that requires unique values. That's going to be important just to be able to use it at all for this. And then I have to create that slug in a workflow, because otherwise when you like click to learn more, what you would typically see is news / some ID
that nobody cares about or nobody can understand. Yeah.
Right. And
how many times?
SEO friendly.
Yeah. How many times have we seen that on a website URL? It's like, oh man.
So for this one, I just have a workflow, and it's a super simple workflow. If anybody's interested, I can send you the code for it. But I have this create page slug. Oh, and I actually changed it from code to just formatting. So if you just do all lowercase and replace the spaces with dashes, that'll get you a good slug for the page, and then just set it to that property that's going to be unique, and then that way everything gets its own nice, pretty, human readable URL.
Yeah. Another elegant solution. Just a tiny little workflow goes so far.
It's the little things that, you kind of, you deal with them for the first few projects, and then you get to the third one and you're like, I'm fixing this. I'm not dealing with this anymore.
Yeah. And even there, like, just like seeing that workflow, it's like you train your team on like the news name like field needs to be right. And it's very easy to train them once they see it. Okay, this is the URL, connecting those dots. Also, like, leaders who aren't understanding necessarily of how all this fits together,
right?
And why we can't necessarily put all this on a single, HubSpot admin, right? Enabling teams and team managers to understand, like, this is why we need the adoption. This is why we need a little tweak to the process. Now we can do all these great things, especially when it's a membership site and it's customer facing. And if we do that right, all of these teams, just like the time availability and the value that they're providing, that goes way up, because we're not like sending emails back and forth about tracking information. Right.
And one thing that I think membership does that people are kind of sleeping on is you can avoid having to buy more seats for the back end if you put some of those controls on the front end. So what I mean by that, we have our events portal here. And typically what you would need to create the event is you'd have somebody who is a HubSpot user log into HubSpot, create those objects, do all the associations and things like that. And what you can do instead is have them be front end users, so just members. And then you can give certain members, I can show this button to only members who are super admins or something like that. And then I can go to create a series. And when I create this series of events, it's going to create not only the series custom object, but an event custom object for each instance of the series based on like the recurrence. So if I wanted to repeat once weekly on Mondays until 2050 or something like that, this could create all of that for you, and even associate it with, I think I'm in here, yep, associate it with the right people, all in one go. So you eliminate a lot of like the manual work. You eliminate having to pay for that extra seat of somebody to be in the back end of HubSpot. And you can put a lot more like validation and stuff on the front end. So I'm a big fan of adding efficiencies to the front end.
Yeah. No, that's powerful. I've definitely done all those things you just described very manually in support of Let's Build. Right. And just doing it like for the month of September, trying to do it ahead of time.
Right.
It's a lot. Wow. It's a lot. Like that thing right there that you just showed would be very, very helpful.
I'll for sure send you the code because it took me a while, because this one also takes into consideration time zones. So it's like converting everything to mountain time. And it will do that. Like if I put in mountain times for my event that I'm creating, it does all the conversions and then shows it in the user's time zone. And that was just a whole lot of math that was not fun to do. So I'm glad that it's like out in the world and working now, but
right.
It was in the butt.
Yeah, no, this is awesome, because I think like the flexibility here, again, is like you're not going to see it anywhere else, And one of the things I like to talk about in regards to portals and the why behind, and this is the part where it's very hard to describe to people and get them to feel the value until they see it. But like when you think about membership portal build outs and you see them, they're like $150K, like $200,000, right? And then you look at the architecture, like just the choice to use HubSpot for all of the things, like cuts this stuff down by 80%, like hours and cost. And it's because of things like you showed the flexibility there of just front end or back end maintenance.
Right.
But a lot of time, like you can choose, like, I know the portal is updated if the CRM's updated. Therefore, I only have to maintain the CRM. It's not, I'm maintaining the CRM and then I'm going to this other place to maintain the portal as well. Right.
Right. You have your like single source of truth that just stays in sync, which is awesome. And yeah, people don't, and I think people would like, I wish more clients would realize how valuable their data is, not only for them, but like for the users themselves. Like if you can figure out a way to give the user value with your data, like the possibilities are endless, essentially. Like we just built a RevOps assessment, which is it's something like 10 different HubDB tables and a custom object and some other custom objects. But it's just data on data on data that we compile into a quiz that when you take the quiz, it gives you like very like highly specific recommendations based on your exact answers. And people are just, they're not there yet with HubSpot. And I think once we hit that inflection point of like, oh shit, HubSpot can do that, like we're off and running.
Right. Yeah. No, yeah. No, it's of course like front end sitting right on top of this data structure. And it
doesn't exist anywhere else. Like there's nothing else you can do that with.
And that's like when I talk about integrations with ERPs and, you know, things like this, like it's always from a place of the reason we at least create the space for it in HubSpot. HubSpot doesn't have to create all the data, like the functionality doesn't have to live there. But if we make a space in HubSpot, we can show it on a web page, like wherever it is, whatever kind of the data is. And that is just very powerful. And like all we can do is hope to keep spreading the word.
Yeah.
Because there's so much more, like now that they're bringing other objects down, like we see, you know, appointments, courses, services, and listings, like, and they're going to keep showing up. They're going to keep giving us templates and new objects. Now you don't even, most people aren't going to need, you know, custom objects. And so so now everything's at professional to be able to do some of this stuff. And it's just, it's going to be super powerful. And the last thing I'll say, and there's so many different ways, you know, things we could talk about here, use cases, and I'd love to have you back at some point. Totally. And because as we talk about AI and the importance of clean data and up-to-date data, right? Like one of the angles I'm starting to talk to people about is creating this two-way maintenance between you and the customer, so that the customer also has the ability to keep their data up to date.
Right.
So when you have like an alignment of stakeholders, it just, everything gets easier because everybody is invested in the data being right. Especially when the customers are doing it in relationship to some, you know, service or experience that they're paying for. Right. And how much now you've focused less on that and focus on giving them, you know, that great experience.
For sure.
So the sooner we can kind of create that, like for me, I talk about it, as soon as there's a value exchange, like a piece of content as an example, like give them a portal, like get them into a portal. Now everything after that can be, aligned, and you start setting that expectation and experience, super early.
Because like if you can build an experience where the user's perceived value makes them not only just like want to give you their data, but like enthusiastic about giving you, like, heck yes, I will give you my data if you're going to put it into that report or whatever, or, I'm going to be able to see my results over time, or, there's a lot that you can do on the front end with the tools that you have, and make it so that the user, it's fun for them to do the work for you. Like it's win-win for everyone.
Yeah, it's like the quote forms that, they'll tell you their life story if they really want, the quote, but you can expand that throughout the whole life cycle. They really want the next step, right? And they know it's in their best interest to give you data. Like for me, I want to give you as much context as possible if I'm asking you to do something for me. It's not about, like, if you give me one field to fill out, I know there's more work coming on the call we're going to have. So it's like, okay, like, is the value there if we only want to ask them to fill out one field? It has its place in the process for sure, but it should be a conversation and less about like, always the minimum number of fields. So this is going to be exciting moving forward. I thank you for coming by and showing those tricks of the trade.
Absolutely. I would love to come back anytime.
Awesome. Well, the more people that we get sharing knowledge, I think the faster we get everybody on board with this kind of power. And I think you're right. Like there's an inflection point coming. I go as far to say, like, I think the HubSpot platform in its current state, like, solves for digital transformation in a way that hasn't been available before. So if that's true, then we can have a big impact. So thanks so much for joining today. And if you're out there, thinking about, things you've always wanted to happen on your website, because you know how powerful it is to have that access on Amazon or whatever membership experience you might get at home, or even on the job. Think about your process, find those opportunities, and let's grow. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, y'all.